Discoveries such as the Wyvern Gods only further emboldened the Guild in their efforts to utilize myths and legends as starting points for their research. That was easier said than done, however. Many folktales are rooted in superstition, and while they may be based on actual monster encounters at times, they are just as often the result of a misunderstanding, hallucination, or outright lie. Nevertheless, the Guild considered this approach worthwhile, and dedicated a decent number of researchers and scriveners to the task. One group of legends that seemed immediately promising was that surrounding the ancient phantom. These stories come in two distinct versions. In the west of the continent, tales tell of a forest spirit that hides in the mist that hangs over the trees, a being that punishes naughty children who misbehave and snatches them unseen. In the east, local myths describe a deity that fills the valleys with fog, a guardian that watches over the bridge between life and death. Across multiple retellings, an image of a creature that hides in fog and tricks people emerges. What made the ancient phantom especially interesting to the Guild, however, was not merely these consistent signifiers, but the attitudes of the people who grew up with these stories. Nearly all of them essentially treated this mythical creature as if it was already confirmed to exist, talking about its existence casually and openly. When questioned by the Guild, some were even surprised to hear that it hadn't been officially discovered yet. Many figured that it had already been classified as an elder dragon, as that was what the locals seemed to unanimously agree on it being. When the perplexed Guild researchers asked for details on its appearance, the case grew even stranger. Nearly no two descriptions were identical, many varying wildly on size, color, and general body plan. Clearly, the ancient phantom existed, but in order to identify what it was exactly, a first-hand encounter would be necessary. And so, Guild hunters and scholars ventured into the forests the creature was set to inhabit, and, after a lengthy investigation, managed to record its existence. It was indeed classified as an elder dragon, and named Chameleos. Once clear and consistent reports were confirmed and compiled, the emerging image of the Chameleos was peculiar indeed. It is chameleon-like in appearance, covered in a purple skin of odd texture, with a large leaf-like tail that ends in multiple coiled protrusions. Its massive eyes can move independently and allow the creature to survey both heaven and earth at the same time. Unlike what one would expect from an elder dragon, the Chameleos is a calm, almost docile creature. While it will defend itself and is not fond of intruders, it is considerably less aggressive than most known monsters. Its most intriguing feature, however, took some time to discover, and was studied across many different researchers and institutions, for it is a truly magnificent ability. The Chameleos can become invisible. Across all early encounters, this remained a consistent observation, one that baffled researchers. At the time, no other monster with that ability had ever been found, and even today, many generations later, there are still only 3, including the Chameleos. It is an absurd power that bends reality, and one that the Guild immediately began investigating thoroughly. For a long time, research went nowhere. The Chameleos is an elusive creature to begin with, and observing invisibility turned out to be just as hard as it sounds. The first breakthrough didn't come from researchers, but from a hunting party that had fended off a curious Chameleos from a trade caravan. During the short scuffle, a piece of the dragon's skin had been torn off by a hunter, who then donated that sample to the Royal Paleontology Scrivener's Lodge. Here, the head researcher immediately went to work, subjecting the sample to all sorts of experiments. Heat, cold, humidity, various conditions were tested to see if the skin's reaction to them could provide a hint as to how the Chameleos turned invisible. These efforts remained fruitless for a time, until a researcher working on an unrelated project accidentally dropped a fresh thunder sac from his sample box onto the Chameleos skin. What initially seemed like a disaster ended up being a blessing. The skin sample reacted to the electricity in the thunder sac and began changing color. It also seemed to maintain the electric charge and could even emit a weakened electric pulse into the air around it. While no amount of tinkering could make the skin go entirely invisible, it seemed obvious that this trait must somehow be linked to the invisibility. There was a problem, however. No electrosac had ever been seen or found on the Chameleos, and without some way to control electricity, there was no explanation as to how this trait could play into the dragon's invisibility. While various scientists hummed and hawed over the skin sample, Chameleos sightings and reports from hunters continued to yield valuable morsels of information. One key observation was that the Chameleos' invisibility did not activate at random. It was always preceded by the dragon exhaling vast amounts of dull mist, and once the mist dissipated, the Chameleos would prioritize exhaling more of it. One hunter managed to capture some of the mist in a flask and condense it back down into liquid form, allowing it to be studied. To the shock of the researchers, the mist was not composed of water, but instead of a neurotoxin. In higher doses, this compound is an extremely deadly poison, but the concentration in the Chameleos' mist was distinctly non-lethal. Instead, it was dosed such that this toxin would produce mild hallucinogenic effects in those who inhaled the mist, another piece of the puzzle, as this hallucinogen could be used to mess with someone's perception. This also explained why eyewitness accounts had previously been so unreliable, as the witnesses in question would have been under the effects of this hallucinogen and would not have been able to trust their eyes. The final discovery that finally blew the case wide open came, once again, from a field sample. This time, a chunk of Chameleos' flesh with still intact blood vessels. Close inspection of the sample found specialized pores that could release their contents into the bloodstream directly when stimulated. What was truly fascinating was what those spores contained. Tiny amounts of pulverized fusium ore. Elder dragons were known to eat or at least lick ores, and the Chameleos seemed to be no exception. It specifically being fusium ore was the key to finally understanding the Chameleos' ability, however. While most hunters know it as a sturdy material used in weapons crafting, fusium ore has another property that makes it useful to master blacksmiths. It produces a weak electric current when mixed with elder dragon blood. Through the combined efforts of hunters and scientists, these discoveries were synthesized into a functional hypothesis of exactly how the Chameleos goes invisible. The ability relies on the interplay between the skin, the blood, and the mist. The Chameleos releases traces of fusium ore into its bloodstream, which causes the generation of a weak electric current. This current spreads to the skin, which begins changing color. The Chameleos carefully modulates the current and skin color until its body is as close to translucent as it can get. Simultaneously, the dragon begins exhaling the toxic mist, covering a wide area around it. The hallucinogenic neurotoxin in the mist disrupts the perception of those who inhale it, tricking them into losing sight of the Chameleos even further. Finally, the electric charge in the skin interacts with the particulates in the mist surrounding the Chameleos, changing the composition slightly such that they bend light differently. This completes the effect and turns the Chameleos fully invisible. It is a wonder of nature, a three-pronged mechanism working in harmonic tandem to enable a truly mind-bending ability. Even as some details about this ability remain unknown, the very fact of its existence is unbelievable. This hypothesis continues to be reinforced and even expanded. Hunters have noted that damaging or breaking the Chameleos' luminous nose horn weakens its invisibility drastically, making it unable to fully disappear. This has led to the belief that the command center for this ability, or at least one of its command nodes, is located in the nose horn. Invigorated by this amazing discovery, hunters and researchers alike mobilized to further observe Chameleos in the wild. Thanks to the dragon's calm nature, these were some of the safest Elder Dragon investigations the guild has ever conducted. Chameleos are only found in humid environments, which is likely tied to the reliance on mist. High ambient humidity probably helps in its generation and upkeep. Once observations started, one of their first findings was the Chameleos' high intelligence, displayed in one of the more amusing anecdotes from that time. Investigation teams traveling through Chameleos territory kept noticing that their supplies were disappearing one after another. Potions, rations, even maps and pickaxes would just vanish. Then, on one occasion, a hunter caught the thief in the act. It was an invisible Chameleos, snatching the items away with its long, sticky tongue. The only reason it was spotted at all was because its tongue does not go fully invisible. Initially, this behavior was assumed to be a result of curiosity and merely reactive. But further observations have revealed that this is premeditated behavior. At some point, the Chameleos realized that supplies such as these are what allow humans to venture into the frontier and into its territory, and that, once they ran out, the humans are forced to retreat and leave. So, by stealing these items, the Chameleos strategically pushes the intruders to leave of their own accord. In a sense, this kleptomania is the Chameleos' way of resolving conflicts peacefully. Even when directly confronted, the Chameleos is generally hesitant to escalate. Numerous encounters with Chameleos were diffused by hunters simply walking away slowly, a gesture the creature understands and accepts as a signal of non-aggression. This disposition is probably why local populations have such a casual knowledge of and relation to the dragon. As long as you respect its boundaries, you have little to fear. Unfortunately, violent encounters still happen. Some humans are reckless, and some Chameleos are just more aggressive than others. While these situations are regrettable, they have provided the guild with vital information on the Chameleos' offensive and defensive abilities. Enshrouded in its mist, the Chameleos uses its invisibility to attack its targets out of sight. Its large body, short but sharp claws, and hard tail can all be used as powerful physical weapons. One surprisingly effective offensive behavior of the dragon is its unusual tempo of movement. The Chameleos moves in slow, rhythmic patterns that make it look quite sluggish when relaxed. In combat, however, the creature erratically alternates between slow and fast motions to such a degree that predicting its attacks becomes near impossible, even for a seasoned hunter. Defensively, the skin of the Chameleos is quite hard and can withstand a surprising amount of abuse. But the real challenge is actually hitting it in the first place. The dragon has an almost supernatural awareness of its surroundings, and seems to have no blind spots. How exactly this is possible is unclear, but hunters noted that damage to the tail seemed to cause the Chameleos to move more clumsily, and even disrupt its invisibility somewhat, as if it was suddenly unsure of its environment. The tail has thus since been theorized to be a sensory organ. Initially, the hypothesis was that the protrusions on the tail could somehow detect changes in light, but more recent findings have proposed an even more daring idea. The curvature of the protrusions, and especially the coiled tail tip, seem reminiscent of a cochlea, the spiral canal found in the ear. The Chameleos has also been noted to react strongly to sounds coming from behind it. Thus, the current belief is that the protrusions capture and direct sound waves from the environment into an unknown auditory sensor somewhere on the tail, probably the underside. In other words, the tail is believed to essentially be one giant external ear. This gives the Chameleos a strong sensory awareness of both its front and back, and indeed eliminates most blind spots. However, getting slashed or trampled by the Chameleos is only secondary to the true threat of the dragon. For if there is one thing that the Chameleos is a master of, it is toxins. The compound used in its mist is only one of a dozen or so different poisons the dragon can produce. The Chameleos has a unique toxin sac that is connected to the digestive system. Parts of the food the Chameleos devours are fed into this sac, where they are mixed with a catalyst fluid that generates a variety of poisons. Which exact toxins are created depends on the dragon's diet, and because Chameleos can have quite varied diets depending on where they live, the toxins they have access to actually varies by region. One of the more exciting and dangerous parts of researching Chameleos is cataloging all the different toxins it can produce, and which regional variation is able to use them. Their effects also vary greatly. Some attack the muscles, some dissolve skin, and others paralyze specific parts of the body or shut down organs. The Chameleos can also release these compounds in various ways. It can mix them into its saliva and spit them out as slimy globules, which seems to be the most straightforward method. It can also, however, turn most of these poisons into mist. A hunter who stood near a Chameleos as it released its hallucinogenic mist noted that the creature's chest was vibrating ever so subtly, but at an incredible frequency. So it appears that the Chameleos possesses some kind of organ that can vibrate its poisons at ultrasonic rates, turning it into mist in the process. The dragon also has small pores on the underside of its wings that can allow it to release poison even from its wing membranes. Even without this, the wings play a role in its combat strategy. By flapping them, the Chameleos can manipulate the position and direction of poison clouds, thus controlling the battlefield. To no one's surprise, the Chameleos itself is essentially immune to all manner of poisons. It is the undisputed king of toxins, and can even pose a threat to other monsters known for their poison resistance, such as the wraiths. Despite this fierce ability, many consider the Chameleos a benevolent creature, rarely the cause for any trouble. Some consider it so peaceful, in fact, that they question why it is even considered an elder dragon. While many locals generally assumed it to fit into that category, many guild researchers, especially young ones, are more critical of it. The creature is peaceful, it is odd, it is peculiar, it doesn't seem like an elder dragon. The guild, however, remains firm in their judgment, for one reason. While the current threat of the Chameleos is somewhat manageable, the potential threat is incalculably immense. A concerning detail in Chameleos research is that there does not seem to be a limit to how wide of an area its mist can cover. While most Chameleos only release enough to cover its immediate surroundings, cases of one dousing an entire forest in its toxic fog do make their way to the guild every now and then. This, combined with the presence of its ultrasonic organ, presents a grim possibility. The Chameleos could technically turn any of its many poisons into a mist that could be spread across an unspecified range. The implications of this are terrifying. Say, for example, a Chameleos has access to voice sap toxin. In smaller doses, this compound simply paralyzes the vocal cords and the throat and prevents the affected from speaking. But a Chameleos has full control over the concentration and form of its poisons, and when concentrated, all of its toxins are deadly. So, say for example, this Chameleos decides to cover a populated area with a mist of concentrated voice sap toxin. It could, within minutes, shroud an entire settlement in silent death, all life perishing in choking agony, unable to scream, an entire ecosystem wiped away on a whim. There would be nothing anyone could do at that point. It's an extreme scenario, and so far entirely hypothetical, but the Chameleos' intelligence also implies a degree of unpredictability. It may seem peaceful and docile, but were anything to set it off, the consequences of its wrath could be catastrophic. And so, the guild insists that it remain classified as an elder dragon to adequately represent and prepare for the power that it wields. Thank you all so much for watching. As always, I hope you enjoyed today's video. As usual, I would like to extend special thank yous to everyone who supports the channel monetarily, either on Patreon or through YouTube channel memberships. I would like to extend special thank yous to Admiral Frost, Alistair in Wonderland, Artur Centeno, Austin, Autumns, Big Mac, Black Ace 202, B, Bruggy, Chocolate Coat, Claire Miboon, Darkest, Destro, Dracovane, Dragonlord, Dissy, Echo but Evil, Ethan Toombs, Theopuz, Glitch NPC, Grüße an Mama, Harpier, Hellbug Hunter, Hutsan, I'm Just Happy to Be Here, Iron Camel, It's Robin Now, Jacob Coleman, Joey Tribby 58, Jonathan Ginsberg, Magenta, Carl the Crab, Kelly Barnett, Kogath, Lifa Dienst, Logan Bilodeau, Lone Strider, Lufish, M1 Have 12, Macaroni Leviathan, Makamawi, Makot02, Matt Hat 124, Meta Defiance, Mr. Pyramid, Molly Mockery, Muhammad Avdol, My Name Gone, Nico Soleil, Nils Schlatter, Noah Schanz, Oakwood Tree, Paige Gandalf Soda, Pancake Pappy, Person 212, Precum King, Punonym, Quali, Quixotic Metroid 906, Rambling Robin, Raspberry, Regal Eagle, Resident Neko Arc, Wronger 97, Rose, Ryan Hook, Skiba, Shebo, Silly Wizard 97, Siragon, Sir Newt, Soruka, Spark Drake, Tacti Wolf, The Alchemist, The Iciest Man Alive, The Dollarfish, 3 Palicos in a Trench Coat, Tigrex Chew Toy, Tsuki Midnight Boshi, Unk with Good Puss, Uthduna is an Octopus, Vulgar Beast, Wandering Soul, Wolf of Time, Zaffi, Dino Garcia, Zai Bandit, Zion HV Augenson, and Kuroneko. Thank you again, everyone. I'll see you next time.